Good morning. Welcome to morning meditation on this first Wednesday of Advent. Thank you for joining us this morning. As I said, today is not a special day, just the first Wednesday of Advent, and I think that's how a lot of times we look at Advent, just not necessarily a special day or a special time, but that list of days that we check off until we get to Christmas. Of course, following really in America in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's that season that so often we may forget about, or maybe it will have gone by too quickly, and then we forget that it has even happened. I was talking with some of our college students yesterday about Advent, and one of them said this, which I thought was profound and an interesting way to think about it. She said, with Lent, there's a set of rules. There's things that you have to do and that everybody does, and you give something up. And there's all this kind of this system and almost a little bit of, oomph to the liturgical time that makes it maybe a little easier to bring ourselves into the season. And with Advent, sometimes, I know I'm speaking for myself, and I think from what was shared yesterday, I think sometimes we just allow the season to go by in the busyness of traveling, of different family or friends gets-togethers, and then suddenly it's Christmas. And so Advent is many times seen as that pre-Christmas. So what are we, these 4 weeks, what are we here for? And of course, one of the things we prepare for in Advent, as we know, of course, is preparing for the Nativity, for the birth of Christ, that birth 2,000 years ago that we still prepare for year after year. Of course, we know that is true and an important part of celebrating this season. But we also prepare for Christ in this time to come into our hearts. For the coming of Christ, not just then, but now in our hearts, in our conversion, in our experience. And with both of these comings of Christ, there is that mystery of the liturgical season and ebb and flow, that these are things that for most of us have happened, right? That historical coming of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, was an event that we still prepare for year after year. Just as, if you're listening to this morning meditation, I think we all could say that there's at least been some coming of Christ into our hearts. Maybe we feel that less now than we did maybe a few years ago. Maybe we feel that less now than we felt yesterday, or maybe we feel that more now. Of course, that coming of Christ changes. But I would imagine most of us can say, yes, it's some way Christ has come into our hearts. And now we still prepare for that. We prepare for that coming of Christ. We ask that coming of Christ to grow in these 4 weeks of Advent. But this third preparation that I want to talk about this morning, I think, is the one that we so often like to maybe sweep under the rug or forget about. And that is the coming of Christ and the kingdom of Christ, that coming of the kingdom, that second coming of Jesus. And so often we might go, I don't really like to think about that. But as we look at the first reading for today, this first Wednesday of Advent, just a day with a seemingly basic name, I think we can find so much longing for that kingdom in that reading. So we'll read that together now. This comes from the book of the prophet Isaiah. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples a feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy rich food and pure choice wines. On this mountain he will destroy the veil that veils all peoples, the web that is woven over all nations. He will destroy death forever. The Lord God will wipe away the tears from all faces. The reproach of his people he will remove from the whole earth, for the Lord has spoken. On that day it will be said, Behold our God, to whom we looked to save us. This is the Lord for whom we looked. Let us rejoice and be glad that he has saved us. For the hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain. The word of the Lord. Of course, the prophet Isaiah is writing at a time when Israel has been exiled, when they are not in Jerusalem, when they cannot worship in Jerusalem. And they are longing for that coming of their earthly kingdom, right? The return to Jerusalem. And now we look at these readings of Isaiah and we see a deeper longing, not just that earthly city of Jerusalem, but that heavenly Jerusalem. And I think, this was written, more than 2,000 years ago, of course. So thousands of years ago, these desires. He will destroy death forever. The Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. Let us rejoice and be glad that he has saved us. These are the same desires, the same hopes. I think that same longing. Advent is a season of not just preparation, but of longing. That same longing that I think so many of us still have. That we are still lying in wait for the coming of that kingdom. If anyone has read the news in the last 12 hours, 16 hours, you'll have seen that in Michigan, there was another school shooting. 3 students that we know of now have been killed and more injured. And we just see such pain and such hardship and longing in our world today. And so this Advent season, how do we respond to that longing? How do we look at this as not just this season of let's check off the dates until we get to Christmas, but to recognize that there is a deeper call, that there is a deeper goal for this time, this beautiful season of Advent. As I talked about last week, the same kind of theme of talking about the coming of the kingdom, that isn't just the far-off thing that we say, well, one day that'll happen and things will be good, but that we have a role in bringing forth that kingdom. That part of the preparation for the kingdom, this third part of Advent, is us, as John the Baptist says, us preparing the way. As the prophet Isaiah says, preparing the way for the kingdom. So these 4 weeks, are we doing that? Or have we gotten maybe so caught up in running from this place to the next and picking up this and picking up that? This time is just too busy. Have we forgotten, and I know I speak for myself, to prepare the way for the coming of Christ? To spread the hope of Christ, to spread the joy of Christ, to spread the love of Christ, to spread the peace of Christ in just our daily interactions with those that we see. Because each of us can't do everything, but each of us can do something. I think of my favorite Advent hymn, which we're going to hear 75 times this season, O come, Emmanuel. And we think about the text of that first verse. We think of such a joyous Christmas song, Advent song. But how does it begin? O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. Do we sometimes feel that we are captive Israel now, that mourns in lonely exile here? But at the end of that verse, we get that common refrain. to rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel has come to thee, O Israel. And of course, in so many ways, the way that Emmanuel comes to each of us is through relationships with others, through the way that we serve one another, the way that we give of ourselves. That is how Emmanuel comes in so many ways. And so, this Advent season, and in our call for all seasons, but especially this Advent season, is just a call for us to remember that yes, we are preparing, of course, for the day Christmas. We are preparing for that birth of Christ. We are called to strengthen Christ in our hearts, right? To call Christ into us. But also, we are called to build that kingdom. To build that kingdom of heaven here as we wait for the joy of that true heavenly kingdom. And each of us, God is calling in different ways, with our different strengths, with our different gifts. So why don't we all ask for that? Say, God, what is that which you are calling me to do this Advent? The way that I can build the kingdom, the unique way that I can build the kingdom. What is that way? Maybe that can be our Advent prayer. Christ, how are you going to use me to bring about your kingdom? Let's not forget that once Christmas comes and the joy of this, hopefully the many joyful celebrations that we have, that call doesn't end on the vigil on December 24th. But that call is eternal and continues on and on and on. Maybe we could make that our prayer this Advent and not let these 4 weeks just fly by. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel has come to thee, O Israel. Thank you for joining us for morning meditation on this Wednesday morning. We do this every morning, Tuesday to Fridays, around 9 a.m. So thank you for joining us, and just wishing you all of the best Advent blessings and wishes as we prepare for this journey together. Thanks for joining in this morning. Peace. God bless.